Welcome onto the show, Nifty. So good to finally sit down and chat about all of the absurd amounts of events and work that you're doing behind the scenes. I feel like every time I talk to you, you're in a different part of the world doing a totally different thing with a totally different set of speakers at conferences, and you've got a crazy schedule. But I was glad I was able to pin you down a little bit to chat about all of the stuff you've been doing in the space. So welcome onto the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and super excited to be in one place so I can have a chat. Yeah.
Yeah, understandable. You're traveling like crazy these days. For those who haven't run into you yet during your travels all across the world, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe a little bit of your background and what you've been up to these days?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Nifty. I go by Nifty Nei. I got into Bitcoin in 2018 as a software engineer working at Cash App on the Bitcoin backend. Quickly figured out how to transition into working on spec stuff for Lightning at Blockstream. So got hired away and worked on Lightning specs and Core Lightning, which is a implementation of the Lightning specification written in C for about 5 or 6 years. Sometime in the middle of that, got sort of distracted writing a textbook, which I haven't published yet, on how Bitcoin works, which then got me into teaching people about how Bitcoin works through Base 58, which is a nonprofit focused on dev education and protocol, like how does the Bitcoin protocol work. And then somehow got quickly nerd sniped into running events back in 2022. It's been like 2 or 3 years now. I am basically running events full time, for better or for worse. So we started with 2 events a year, went to 3, and then this year, for whatever reason, we're doing 6 events that are focused on the Bitcoin technical community, and they are all over the world. They bring 200 to 300 people together at a time, usually to talk about a specific topic in the Bitcoin technical space. So we tend to be focused on topics that I find interesting, people want to talk about. Usually there's like key players that have interesting things to say about that particular topic. So, um, for example, we did like a eCash one in Berlin last October. This October, we'll be back in Berlin doing one on Lightning. We're going to be in Riga ahead of the Baltic Honey Badger talking about privacy in Bitcoin, which is exciting. We haven't talked about privacy since December 2022 in Mexico City. So it's like, hopefully, it's a good opportunity for Bitcoin developers and people in the space, maybe like the privacy space more generally, will be able to come together and talk about best practices, what's going on, concerns. I don't know. I think I need to see if Super Testnet's coming to Riga. I'm pretty sure he is. See if he can like maybe do a live Monero. I feel like he's been like, I don't know, anyone who follows Super
Stuck.
Testnet.
He's stuck on Monero. I don't know why.
Yeah, but I feel like he's been like fighting with the Monero people. Up with Lightning stuff. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have him like do a live, like what do you call it? Um,
Quote unquote tracing demo. I
yeah,
definitely am
exactly.
hesitant to call what he does tracing, but
Okay, there you
he
go.
calls it
Okay, and maybe
tracing.
we shouldn't get
So
into that on this cause. It'll be like distracting. But
if you're gonna have him come do a live Monero thing, then I'm gonna have to come to Riga. So I mean
this is
that's
how we get you though.
yeah, I know. That's how you lure me in.
Uh,
I was on the fence, but you know, if Super's gonna be there in person, I might have to come get into some mortal Monero versus Lightning
I mean, you should like
combat.
look. You should come. I'm gonna talk to Super right after this and let you know. But yeah, but that's kind of the hope, right? And that's the reason why I do topics, is because I feel like it's a fun opportunity to bring everyone who's passionate around that particular topic
Uh-huh.
together
Uh-huh.
to talk about like things that are really important in the space. So, I mean, we just did one on mempools and mining pools, which to be fair, I've been planning for like a year. We got everyone in the
That's what
room
they all say. Uh-huh.
who cared about mempool and relay policy and like some extension. We also had a bunch of miners and mining people in the room too, because they're like pretty related. So we had some people talking about like mining pool designs, payouts, block building template stuff. So we had a really great talk on Datum, which I need to start getting all the videos out now that I'm like back in one place. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm like all over the place. You asked me a
They're
question and
good.
I went on a tear.
You're good. We'll circle back to a lot of little pieces from that. I feel like because you gave a really good overview of a lot of things we're going to talk about today. So I'll narrow down. First, I want to focus on the just kind of like how you got into running conferences. Like, I feel like especially your background is not the normal person that turns into a
Yeah.
13 conference organizer. You
Yeah.
said you got nerd sniped, but I'd love to hear a little bit more because it's not like you're even just running like one small event a year, but you've run 13 now. You have 6 in 2025 alone, 4 more to go. Like, how did that transition happen?
Yeah, I feel like I have to, like, correct you as the, like, mini autist that I am. I've only run 9
Uh,
so far. It'll be
will
13
be
at the
13.
end of the
Will be
year, yeah.
13.
But
Good
and
catch.
we're making plans to get probably the next 3 or 4 in early 2020. I think I have, like, 4 already tentatively on the books for 2026 next year already, so, um, how did I get into this? That's a great question. I think it started because I was like, it's 2022. I was doing this Bitcoin like developer like online classes for Base 58. We're still kind of like in the middle slash like COVID was still a thing. Um, and I think it was also a point in time, like there were a couple of things happening all at once. One is I was teaching devs about how Bitcoin works, but wanted to be able to send them to like a conference or something, like as a way to like learn more. The other was I was working at Blockstream and realized that there was so much interesting stuff happening at Blockstream with like the research, etc. And I felt like Blockstream as a organization wasn't doing an amazing job of like bridging the gap between what they were doing and the rest of the developer ecosystem. Um, and then the third thing was it was at the point in time when um what's his name? Craig Wright was harassing developers with lawsuits. And so a lot of what you would see in the media or like the news about Bitcoin and Bitcoin development in general was, oh, Bitcoin isn't cool. Like there's nothing interesting happening in Bitcoin development. All the cool, interesting apps are happening in other like crypto ecosystems. And like all the cool, interesting devs are leaving Bitcoin. I was like, I know that's not true because like all of my friends in Bitcoin are cool doing interesting things. So I was like, okay, I'll just like do a conference. Whatever. If that how hard can that be? Um got some really great names at my first one. I also ran it the same week as Consensus, which was genius because like Adam Back and Tad Dryja showed up for one of the after parties to hang out. Um and managed to get like Jimmy Song came and did like a class from one of his workshops. Like I think our first one was kind of more focused on the education, new stuff. My friend Casey Rodamore came and did his first ever like ordinals workshop at the conference. That's probably the most famous thing that's ever happened in a Bitcoin plus plus is like very first workshop of ordinals. But we also had people like showing off lightning stuff. Dusty was there talking about splicing work, like it's just like a nice array of people doing interesting stuff in the Bitcoin space. Yeah, so that was the first one. And then I was like, immediately, I think the problem with running an event, so I guess it's like they have this like saying in like a relationship when you're dating someone, if you go to your first date and you've already kind of just organically planned the next time you're gonna hang out with a person, like you don't have to worry about it. That's usually like
Mm.
a good sign that maybe like a relationship that's sticky. This kept happening with Bitcoin plus plus events. Like by the end of the first Bitcoin plus plus, I was hanging out with Car from Pub Lab and we were like planning like what if we went to Mexico City and did our next one 6 months from now in Mexico City. And then we went to Mexico City and I was like, okay, let's start planning the next one 6 months from now, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of just became this thing where it's like you get into conversations with people and they're like, oh, what if we do this? And I'm not the sort of person who's gonna say no. Um, Also, establishing Bitcoin Plus Plus as an international conference series, I think, really opens up the number of venues, places you can do them,
Mhm.
times that, like, if you're going to do one in the United States, doing 2 a year is probably the max, right? Even then, I feel like there's so much competition in the Bitcoin dev conference space in the United States alone. Like Bitcoin Plus Plus runs something once a year in North America, traditionally Austin. We just did our 4th event in Austin a few weeks ago. Um, there's also TabConf out in Atlanta. They're usually in October, and then there's a conference that started. I think of it as a Bitcoin Plus Plus spinoff. They might see it differently, but OpNext started doing like
Mhm.
the scaling stuff that we did last year in Austin, and now they run 2 conferences a year. So that's 4 conferences for developers that are happening in the United States every year. Um, so I mean, Bitcoin Plus Plus, like we're doing 6 events, but that means we're doing them in 6 countries. So we have our North America event. We did a South America event in February. So all of my American events, I guess, are done. Now I'm like running one event in Istanbul, one's going to be in Berlin, one's going to be in Riga. The Riga one will be close to another conference. And then we'll be doing our first East Asia conference in December. So like, I feel like those three is probably a little bit of a miss. We'll see how that goes. A little bit of a, that was not totally, that just kind of happened. That wasn't planned, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but there's definitely room. I think we're gonna looking at adding like an Africa conference next year. Anyways,
Nice.
basically, this is how you go from like two conferences a year to like a lot, is because you're like,
Uh-huh.
oh wait, I need one conference per year in each quarter of the world, period. And all of a sudden you end up with like,
6 in a year.
yeah, six in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I really like that as well because it feels like in a lot of ways America's pretty saturated just generally with Bitcoin stuff. Like there's multiple conferences here. Like you said, there's even multiple dev specific conferences here. Bitcoin has been pretty like normalized here for a while. There's a strong dev culture already, obviously in key parts of the US. There's already like kind of dev hubs in the US, Austin, Nashville, the Bay Area a little bit. So I feel like there's a lot already here. So I like that you're taking it global and that you're focusing on bringing other people into this Bitcoin dev space and into the like the broader technical ecosystem that aren't just US. Because there's also just so many brilliant technical people who, for very understandable reasons, don't want to travel to the US as well. So, like, a lot of the best conversations necessarily can't happen in the US.
Yep.
And that's something like I've seen in the Monero community as well. As we tried a couple events in the US, and they're just so drastically limited who could actually travel to the event that you kind of have to do both or lean into something like European instead because it's a lot easier for people to get to. So I definitely see the value in that split there. And I like you talk about how it's this organic thing of you just have conversations that spark, oh, well, we really need to have a Bitcoin plus plus about this because we had so many of these side conversations here, but we don't have this set as a topic. So like, is that normally how you're choosing the topics? Is there anything else that goes into it? Or is it just kind of like
I don't know.
what pops up?
I know I have no idea how I pick topics. I think some of it is like, who do I think I can get to sponsor the event? Um, like, do I think there's money that will pay for a conference like that to happen? So like I've recently had someone pitching to me on doing one in like on ARC, and they're like, we'll help you find sponsors. Like we're invested in the space. We want to see an ARC event happen. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, so that's kind of part of it is like who convinces me into it. The other thing is I don't know, I think it's a little bit of like just like sort of like lick your finger, put it in the wind and see which way you feel like the wind is blowing. I think I'm pretty good at one thing I think that makes the conferences really good is I tend to be and like we did a layer 2 conference for Bitcoin like 2 years ago, which at this
The
point
only one I've attended, actually. I've been
okay,
trying to
yeah.
attend so many, but that's the only one that I've actually made it out to so far for Bitcoin plus plus.
Yeah, yeah, but like I did layer twos and then like I think a year and a half later that became like the hot thing, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of those things where it's like, I don't know, you just kind of start seeing people organizing around a topic and it's like, okay, I think there's critical mass here and
Mm-hmm.
that we can pull people together to talk about it. The privacy one, I wish I had like a why with privacy in Riga. It just kind of felt right. Like I think that's kind of it is like what feels right.
Mm-hmm.
Who do I think I can get to come to talk? Um, yeah, I think the privacy, so like I think this Riga one's going to be really interesting because I think we're going to have a lot of people. I need to double check that the tour is sending someone. I've been emailing them and they think they're like
Mm-hmm.
tentatively confirmed to send someone to talk about tour stuff. I'm going
Nice.
to have my friend Nick T from Austin, who's been working on an OpenSats grant on this project called, I think it's Tor LN, El Toro. Wait, I might be
Yeah.
totally wrong.
El Toro sounds right.
El Toro, okay. He's been working on basically how you can run a Tor node and get paid Lightning in order to use the network. So like monetizing Tor, which I know is super controversial depending on who
Mm-hmm.
you're talking to. Yeah. I think the other project, I'm hoping to get the NIM network people there. So I'm
Yeah.
really hoping that there'll be like a network privacy as like a sub focus at the event, in addition to privacy in terms of transacting. I think Yuval's gonna come from Spiral, who's like, I think of him as like being on the far expert level of like how to transact with Bitcoin privately on chain. Um, Yeah, hopefully maybe Super Testnet and some Monero people will be there like fighting it out. So it's yeah, so it's like I think privacy, I'm definitely thinking like broad spectrum, like network privacy, privacy in terms of transacting. Uh, I think we're gonna have another privacy guys coming that are I have to go back and relook at what their proposal was. But yeah, so if you're working on privacy stuff or there's something on a privacy angle that you want to talk to people about what your project is or get in front of an audience of Bitcoiners who really care about it, like I think hopefully this is the event to come to.
And it sounds like not necessarily just like Bitcoin native privacy tech, like not just CoinJoin or PayJoin, but it sounds like you're open to anything that could enhance what you can do on Bitcoin in a privacy preserving way.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why there's the plus plus in Bitcoin. No, it's Bitcoin plus plus. But yeah, it's like, okay, let's get people who care about privacy, and transaction privacy is definitely a part of it. But network level privacy is another like huge piece of the
Mm-hmm.
puzzle. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, maybe I can find someone who like worked on Dandelion to come. Which for those of you who don't know what Dandelion is, it's basically whenever you send out a transaction, how do you hide which node originated the transaction? If you do like a broadcast like in direct waves, it becomes, I think, more obvious to like easily find out which node originated a transaction. Dandelion's a way of being able to one hop it and before it starts like mass broadcasting out.
Or multi-hop it. Yeah, we've had Dandelion plus plus deployed in the Monero network for 4 years now, maybe longer, which was just an iteration of Dandelion to fix some original denial of service issues. But yeah, it's a really cool technology. I'll connect you with the dev who implemented it on Monero. I don't know.
That'd be sick. Yeah.
I don't think I know any of the people who actually wrote the paper, but he did all the implementation and network level stuff for Dandelion plus plus and Monero, which I think would be very, very relevant because that is one of the main network level privacy pain points. If you're not running a node purely behind Tor, you essentially reveal that you're the originator of every transaction. There's some small mitigation in place right now, but nothing that really prevents an active adversary who runs multiple nodes from knowing that X node was the origination point of this transaction ID, which is a big problem when the transaction ID also reveals a lot of information about the transaction itself, since so much is transparent in Bitcoin. So yeah, I would love to see that effort get picked back up. And I mean, it doesn't really feel like there's more momentum behind the topic of privacy in Bitcoin over the last like year or so. It feels like a lot of that had kind of died down. And then in the wake of the Samurai Wallet indictment, Tornado Cash stuff, it feels like a lot more people kind of got woken up to this idea of like, we can't just rely on companies building and running centralized privacy tools for Bitcoin privacy. Like we actually have to think about this holistically from a protocol level, from a network privacy level, like you mentioned. This is something that's going to have to be worked on across the board. So it does feel like a pertinent time to get into that when it's much more top of mind for people. I mean, even with Page One V2 just becoming a reality, there's a lot of fun stuff happening there. So I'm definitely excited for that one.
Yeah, exactly. So, and yeah, exactly. I think this is like kind of what I was talking about. Kind of just feel like people's attention focusing back on a thing. It's like, okay, let's get everyone together and have them talk about. And I feel like this conversation about the dandelion stuff is such a great illustration of like why it's an important topic to like bring people together to talk about, right? Like the whole point of Bitcoin plus plus events and the reason why we kind of focus on the topics that we do is like they're kind of meant to be a conversation, education moment, right? Where everyone's like, okay, like what is the status of Dandelion? Like Monero has it. Is it implemented on Bitcoin? Why not? What needs to happen? Maybe Bitcoin plus plus by bringing the devs together, especially to talk and work on these things, is like maybe someone will like work on it during the hackathon. Like maybe this is the opportunity where people sit down and they're like, I mean, that's like the whole point. So maybe I should point out that like every Bitcoin plus plus has a hackathon. I don't really talk about it because I'm terrible at marketing. But I think that um honestly, our hackathons have some of the most interesting projects, I think, at Bitcoin hackathons happen, period. And I need to do a better job of like figuring out how to tell those stories about what's happening with those. But yeah, anyway, so like I mean, this is the reason why our hackathons, I think, get such interesting projects is it's the right number of people in the room talking about a specific topic, so you manage to get like enough critical mass that people start working on and contributing and like talking about how to like improve XYZ. Anyways, sorry, that's like
Yeah.
kind of a long
No,
spiel.
I think that's a good sidebar because I know I just saw that at Bitcoin Vegas, y'all unveiled the winner of the hackathon. I think of the last Bitcoin Plus Plus. Maybe just like briefly
Oh,
intro
so
how that process works and who that winner was. Maybe just for people to better understand like what this actually looks like in practice.
yeah, so actually what that was is Bitcoin Plus Plus ran because we do such a good job at hackathons. And by we, I mean Alex Lewin from Atlanta BitLab, who's been helping out with Bitcoin Plus Plus hackathons for the last couple times. He's just such an expert at how to like conduct and run a really good event, especially on the hacking side. So we partnered with Bitcoin Vegas to be like tech, the team behind
Okay.
their
Okay.
hackathon.
Yeah.
So it was an online hackathon. Usually at our events, they're all in person. So it was an online one. It ran for about a month. And the winner was a team portal, which launched. I should know better about what they launched, but it's like, I'm going to forget. I know the team is like out of Italy and they did a hardware wallet. I'm not sure exactly what their hackathon project was. I looked at it, but I'm having trouble remembering. I think it was how to basically I think how to use like your private keys as more of a digital identity. So like how to use public key and private key
Uh,
in
mhm.
your wallet as like a more broad use case for things outside of just signing for Bitcoin transactions. But don't quote me on that. Also, Portal guys, if you're listening, I apologize for not knowing exactly what you won for. But they were like our big winner. We had like a bunch of teams on that. I can't remember again. This is like I was not
You do too many events. I'm sure they blur together.
event.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple hundred submissions on Dev
Wow.
Post, which was
Wow.
huge. It was really competitive. Yeah, so big thanks to everyone who submitted as well as like our judges. There were some like we got some really cool projects. Like it was a really, I think, successful event. So really well.
And normally these like at each Bitcoin Plus Plus event, like you mentioned, there's an in-person hackathon for the people who are actually there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that concept too, because just like you're bringing together so many technical people that aren't usually going to be in the same room that you can have those side conversations turn into something real rather than just be like a side conversation that's interesting there. People forget about it and move on. Like I think having the hackathon as a core part of that is such a fascinating way to do things and let people like of all skill sets jump in different ways or even just observe people who are much more technical and much more experienced build something live about an idea they were just talking about and be able to actually like be a part of that. It's definitely a fascinating piece of things.
Yeah, and I think this is why like it kind of when you start thinking about it, it's like, oh, I was doing education with developers and it was like, okay, what's the next step for getting these developers into the ecosystem? It's getting them together with experts so they can I mean a lot of why I mean I care a lot about the cultural underpinnings of open source in Bitcoin. And I don't really emphasize this enough in my events or like my marketing of them, but like the reason that it's important to get everyone together in real space, especially like newbies, like and having it be an open forum that's open, like you can buy a ticket, you can show up. It's not like a closed meeting of just spec experts. Like it is spec experts in that particular topic, hopefully talking about what they're working on, but like it's also an open forum for anyone who's interested to show up and participate and like learn how experts do things like in insofar not even just like how do they do things but how do we hold conversations, how do we like present our position, like how do we think about new changes, etc. I don't know. Like we just did the mempool one, which felt like quite contentious. I was worried people would stop dropping out because they started finding each other on the internet a week before the event. Which like great for publicity, I guess, but also like terrible as an event organizer. You're just like, is everyone gonna like leave? Like, is no one coming? Like, if these guys get so mad at each other online and can't show up and have a real conversation, like, how fucked am I? Um, you know, like not that it's about me, but like to some extent, it's
I
like
mean, I mean, the rumor is that you started all of the op return controversy. That you probably paid like a core dev to open the PR. That you knew that you really needed to drum up some extra attendance, some extra spice level for
extra
the Bitcoin
spice.
Plus Plus. So you've been
Yeah.
working on that for like a year behind the scenes,
No
making
one
sure that
knew
there's
how
nice controversy.
no one knew how interesting mempools were, and like I think everyone was like, no, script is where the interesting stuff is. What's Nifty doing? She's lost the plot on the mempool thing. But no, I know how to stir up the drama. No, I didn't.
Huh.
I mean, to some extent, like, did that help sell more tickets? I actually don't think so because it happened too soon, close to the event.
Yeah.
Like, I had a couple people that were like, "I wanna come," but plane tickets are, like, prohibitively expensive because it's 2 days before.
Yeah.
So, if I had planned it look, if I had planned that, not that I would plan such a thing, but, if someone were going to, like, the timing was just not amazing. Like, it was good from, like, getting at people's attention online
So
perspective.
next time you'll do it a little bit further away from the event,
I'm just
right?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
by me, I mean whoever starts controversy. So, like, sad if you guys wanna stir up some privacy controversy in about
Mm,
3 or 4 weeks, like,
okay.
let me know who to talk to. I mean, I think this is the thing about being good at knowing kinda where the zeitgeist and the interesting conversations are, just, like,
Mhm,
intuitively, I'm really good at just kind of knowing what is interesting and new and, like, what is gathering steam. And I've always been like that. It's not just in Bitcoin, it's, like, almost in anything. I can usually pick
hmm.
out, like, my favorite song will be, like, the top hit of the summer. Just
You're just ahead
whatever.
of the curve, ahead
Just
of the curve.
ahead of the curve, yeah. Um, so, like, so it didn't surprise so the most surprising thing to me about the mempool drama was that it was a surprise to everyone else that there was drama there. Because I think I had known that
Mm,
there was drama in the mempool forever, which is why I, like, pulled all I think I had for I managed to invite and, like, I'm really grateful that all the right people showed up to have
yeah,
a really interesting
yeah,
conversation, but they had already all committed, right? And it just so happened that that was the right group of people to have in a room to have a really interesting conversation, in person and timely. Um, do I wish that that's what we had talked about? No, there were other more interesting I really wanted to have, like, a conversation about cluster mempool was, like, I really
mm,
wanted. I mean, we did have a talk about it, and Peter presented his work, but,
yeah,
the things that I wanted to shine the spotlight on didn't get as much of a spotlight as I wanted. So, um
yeah. No, it's definitely understandable. I mean, I think it did make for much more interesting content, and I'm sure, like, a lot more views on the live stream and stuff like that because it was so pertinent. I'm sure that a lot of that gift of yours also comes back to your background. Like, it helps that you are a technical spec engineer, like, you understand what the dev side is from bottom to top, so you can build ahead of time a much better set of topics, a much better lineup of guests because you understand how this stuff actually works behind the scenes. I think that's sometimes an issue that happens with conferences. I'm not bashing any specific conference, but a lot of times it's people that are just so disconnected from what the actual attendees or the actual speakers care about that they're just going to do what they think will sell the most tickets, but they don't actually have any kind of they're not in touch with reality of what's actually the most interesting thing going on right then. So I think that's something that has played out well from how you came from like this hyper technical background into conference organizing. Is it actually like that skill set fits together very well to make something that's much better than it would be otherwise.
For the particular niche, 100%, right? And that's why, like, technical conferences were one of my favorite things to do when I was an Android dev. Like, I loved to
Mm,
talk at them.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I don't know. What was I gonna say? Oh, like, I think there's like a trade-off though with like knowing what the interesting technical conversation says gets you a certain audience, but it doesn't always sell tickets. So like one of the things that and it doesn't necessarily sell sponsorships, I think, is the other part of it. I've been lucky and grateful to like have me like made money doing the events, but it's like not enough to really like pay me a salary, if that makes sense. Like mostly it's like volunteer work kind of at this point. And so I think this is one of the reasons that it's like trying to run more events is like, okay, is there some level of number of events that like brings in enough money? Because I'm not like maybe I should be more focused on selling tickets. I'm not as focused on selling tickets as I am getting the right people in the room to have a productive conversation. And it turns out that sometimes those aren't necessarily the same thing.
mm.
Um, Maybe I could get better at manufacturing controversy or whatever it is, but that's not like I don't know, I almost feel like I'd have to hire out for that, or, like, hopefully it just happens organically, and this is part of, like, why, like, kinda to talk about, like, one of the things I'm really trying to work on getting the conferences to the point where I have more volunteers or help or, like, more people working part-time to make the logistics and, like, the agenda and sponsorship stuff like work without less of my time. Because one of the things that I've sort of realized is I feel like like we're doing all this work at Bitcoin Plus Plus to generate all this content and have all these conversations, but it's kind of been difficult to translate those into like making it more accessible for people that aren't at the event. Um,
Mm.
so I'm trying this like new thing. I don't know how successful it's going to be, called like Bitcoin Plus Plus Insider Edition. Which is in theory it should be a newsletter, though I haven't really been sending out newsletters. Recently I've just been doing a series of interviews with devs about what they're working on, why they're working on it. So like there's a Substack, which is where I'll put up if I ever start writing articles and newsletters, that'll be where it is. We're also on YouTube. I started up like a Twitter account, or I guess the X account. And the whole reason for that is like there's all this interesting stuff happening. How can we like better package it up in a way that it's like consumable for people that aren't at the events? So they have a better idea of like what's understand like having how do I get this understanding, my understanding of what's happening in the ecosystem more legible to people that aren't able
Mm.
to come to the events, or
Hmm.
I don't know, etc. I don't know how successful that's going to be, but I'm going to try it.
That's like a whole nother, that's like a whole nother full-time job. I mean, that's basically running a media company at that point, is all the different pieces that go into play. So it's very time consuming to do all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I'm looking for help, sort of. I don't know, we'll see. I'm kind of still feel like I'm not exactly sure what like the media piece looks like yet. I'm just going to start doing things and see what sticks. Which may be a terrible idea, but
Not necessarily. I think a lot of the best stuff comes out of what you want to actually do or what you want to actually make, is how the best content, podcast, etc. happens. If there's a niche and a place that people are already looking for that, like I definitely think that can work. But also a reason, like for people listening, what's kind of the thing you're looking for help? Any specific background or any specific expertise or any specific thing that you think would be really helpful to jump in and help with the insider edition?
yeah, so I think like I put out a job posting on Stacker News and got a lot of really great people that I need to get back to about helping do like an open source reporter, which is just like going out and helping me kind of collect information about what's happening across the space,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So I've got a couple of those that I need to like figure out exactly. I think for me at this point, it's like, um, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be too editorial. I think it's going to be more, yeah, I don't know. I guess like, I'm not sure. I still need to figure out exactly what I'm doing. I have a friend who's like, so I've been doing interviews. Um, I have a friend who's like, I basically hired a friend to help edit and produce and like put all those out.
Nice.
So I already have help
Mm-hmm.
on that part, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I guess it's like, I guess for me, like the thing that would be useful is like if people find things that are interesting that they want to know more about, like what is it? So one of the things I struggle with is I have such a deep understanding of this space that for sometimes I don't understand like what is new and interesting to people that aren't that deep in it, and like where the gaps are. So I think it's like if there's like something people want to know more about, or they have questions about, or like just want like more explanation about XYZ thing, it would be nice to know like what that is and how I can like help people
Yeah.
understand that, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely something I'll drop any links you have for the Insider Edition in the show notes as well, so people can dig in and follow your new accounts and everything around that. Because that's one of the things where I feel like there's definitely a missing niche. Like right now, I can only really think of the Bitcoin Ops, I think that's the name of it, newsletter, which is like a dev focused newsletter, but that's very in the weeds. Sometimes a little too much for the average person. And outside of that, there's not many resources like that are like technical focused, but not too technical, which is a tricky line to ride. But I'm definitely curious how Insider Edition plays out.
Yeah, I think the like perspective is like more like, it's kind of like here's the world of Bitcoin plus plus, so like what we're focusing on and like the different
Okay.
topics that we're pulling
Mm-hmm.
out, and maybe a little more narrative. Like, here's a narrative around, here's the people, here's the narratives, here's why they're building it, here's why you should care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Focused then. I love OpTech. I think that's the one you mentioned.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yep.
Um, I think of them a lot as like, I think there's this like, so in the Washington DC, I think there's like a newsletter called like The Hill or something, and it's like the technical readout of like every bill that comes up, etc. I think of OpTech a lot like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is like I think aiming to be more like the Wall Street Journal of Bitcoin. That sounds weird, but like sort of just like the technical, like, or maybe like Wired, maybe not quite Wired, but more just like I don't know. I was a big reader of the Wall Street Journal growing up. Fun fact. I like super love.
Like the actual paper newspaper?
Yeah, like I started
Oh,
reading the
wow.
newspaper when I was like 12 or 13 because it was at the like breakfast table. I read it all the way up to like I left for college. And then when I was in college, I couldn't figure out how to reliably get it delivered to my door, so I basically fell off. But like, like basically my entire like middle school, high school, would read the Wall Street Journal every
Crazy.
morning.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in like the marketplace section. Anyways, it's like a whole thing. But yeah. So kind of just thinking about it more from that perspective of like that level of storyified
Yeah.
reporting.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm really curious to dig into that more. Once you have more around that.
We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be keeping an eye out.
So, yeah.
So we touched on it a little bit more. And if you don't have a ton of thoughts around it, that's fine. We can just move on. But I am curious, like with you setting the topic for Riga, which is August 8th and 9th, correct? It's
7th and 8th. Yeah, it'll
7th
be
and
the
8th.
Thursday,
Okay.
Friday ahead of Baltic Honey Badger, which is Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a pertinent topic for me and for the podcast, the one that I want to get to most. You set that topic on privacy. I'm curious, like, how do you view privacy in Bitcoin right now? Like, obviously, don't have to get into every detail, but is it something you view as a serious issue and concern right now, and thus the need for a Bitcoin plus plus around it? Or is it more you reading the zeitgeist, as you mentioned before, of what's popular and what needs more conversations around it?
Yeah, I think from I think it's something we need to have more of a conversation around. I think that post Samurai, there's like, and like Wasabi falling off. I think there's kind of been, and there's new tech night, like silent payments is a new thing. PayJoin V2 is coming out. I think that there's like, I think it's a real opportunity to sort of talk as a community about like what the current status of privacy is, period. There's lots of new projects. So it is a little bit of the zeitgeist thing. Personally, I'm pretty terrible about privacy stuff. I think I definitely care about it's like for me on like the thing like spectrum of things that I care about and pay attention to, it's definitely lower. A lot of my interest tends to go into like liquidity problems with like where liquidity is on Lightning and marketplace functionality more so than
Mhm.
privacy stuff. But I mean, I personally spent a lot of time working on what is essentially like a coin join protocol for Lightning, which is the interactive transaction stuff. Which my understanding is a lot of the like I spent a couple years building that so that we could get to the place where you could have an open permissionless liquidity marketplace in
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
protocol. But in
Mhm.
order to do that, you have to basically build what essentially is like a pay join, but for at the Lightning level. So Lightning, like if you're using all the stuff that like I worked on, plus like Lightning payments and Bolt 12, y- I I would I would be like, and maybe I should talk to Yuval, et cetera, before I like make a strong assertion here, but I think your privacy in transacting is actually pretty good. Um, Minus a few things with like lightning gossip that we still need to fix. TM. Actually, maybe I should get some lightning gossip people to come talk. Um, but like, I guess my whole thing is a lightning, almost like I got into Bitcoin mostly through the lightning stuff.
Mhm.
I guess I worry less about privacy because I have a better understanding of what like the trade-offs are of using Lightning as a protocol, especially if you're using your own node, you're not like using a centralized service. Um, I mean, dude, transacting peer-to-peer is pretty dope, it turns out. Like
Yeah.
some of the best privacy you can get is transacting peer-to-peer, right? And Lightning is so private because the state is just like pairwise state as opposed to global state. Anyways, um,
Yeah.
I won't get too into that, but yeah, I guess my TLDR is like I don't really worry about it as much because I'm like, well, I use splicing on Phoenix and like I splice into Phoenix stuff. So like I feel like it's like the tech on Lightning is farther out than maybe most people know about. Maybe.
I think part of it too, and why I'm excited for the Bitcoin plus plus to be focused on privacy. Hopefully there will be Lightning centric conversations, is that like the spectrum of what privacy you get in Lightning is massive. It goes from practically no privacy to very good privacy, but it all depends on what implementation you're using, what client you're using, who you're getting channels through. Is it an LSP, or is it with peers that you actually trust? Is it with centralized routing hubs? Like, how are you actually receiving payments? Is it Bolt 11 invoices? Is it Bolt 12? offers? Are you using blinded paths? Like, how did you open the channels? There's so many things that go into Lightning privacy. Like, to me, it's one of the hardest technologies to quantify what the privacy that's actually provided to an end user is, because you have to set so many parameters before you can actually have like a legitimately useful conversation around how good is the privacy in practice for the average person. And that's one of the conversations I think has to happen, because there's a lot of people who think Lightning is not private, which is false, and a lot of people who think Lightning is perfectly private, which is false.
Also not true.
And it's definitely in the middle, and there's huge variance based on how people are using Lightning. So a lot of work needs to go into figuring out, like, how do we talk about this, both just from like the marketing, the documentation side of what the expectation should be for an end user who cares about privacy, but also like from the dev perspective, making all these tools a reality. Like Bolt 12 does exist, but it's very rare that someone can actually use it still, unfortunately. So like, it's great that it's a technology, but we need a lot of developer effort on obviously shipping Bolt 12 and LND, which needs to happen like 3 years ago. And then having Bolt 12 support within wallets, like there's so much that needs to happen there. So I think that's definitely a critical topic around Lightning. Like Lightning can be a really, really good privacy tool. It can be. And I want to see it get there. So I'm excited for more conversations to happen around that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And having this conversation is really great because I'm like, oh yeah, we should probably focus on that. I think part of my problem of being so into Lightning is I definitely tend to like not focus on it as much as a thing because I know so much about it. So I'm like, that's not interesting to me. So I'm not gonna like shine a light on it because like I'm not as interested in learning about that. But you're right, there's like a lot to talk about there and bring people in.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I don't have much other questions to get into, but I guess main last thing for you is just that almost everyone I talk to who has been to a technical conference talks so highly about Bitcoin plus plus. I mean, I don't know how many people who I know within the Bitcoin dev space would come up to me at Bitcoin Vegas, and we were chatting about Bitcoin plus plus, or they were mentioning that I need to get out to Riga, or they were talking to me about how much they've enjoyed previous conferences. Like, it's the brand has such respect. Like the conferences you put together have such respect within the technical community. That's really awesome to see, and I'm excited for the rest of the ones you have coming up this year. But just wanted to make sure to relay a lot of the feedback that I've been getting. I know I haven't been to many, only been to one so far. Hope to get to Riga, but it's very up in the air. But it's definitely just one of those conferences, like, invaluable. Thankful for all the work that you're doing on that behind the scenes, and just like, I don't think people understand how much work goes into planning a conference of any size, but like coordinating all of that is monumental. So thank you for all the work you've been doing around that.
Cool. Yeah. And I mean, thanks to everyone that's come because like the thing that I've learned running events, I don't really see I've been like an individual contributor dev without a team for like half a decade working on Lightning. And the thing about running conferences that's so different is how much it takes people showing up to even make them work. So I'm like extremely grateful that people love the events and keep coming. So please guys keep coming. And bring your friends and yeah, start telling your neighbors about how Bitcoin technicals work so they can come to the conference and have fun and learn some stuff too. Because like this is how I think this is how we keep Bitcoin to be like the open ecosystem that I want it to continue being, where people can show up and talk about their ideas and work on projects together and move Bitcoin as an ecosystem forward together. I don't know. Like otherwise I think it does risk turning into kind of like a closed door thing where, there's only experts that get invited to expert meetings that are able to contribute. And it's like, how do you make it a wider thing by showing up to events? So
Yeah.
I hope to see you in Riga. Is that if you can make it? I know you have like other obligations that might take your time. But if anyone's listening, check out btcpp.dev. We've got all of our events up there, and Riga is our next one in August, and I really hope a bunch of people can make it.
I did have one last question that I want to throw out there that I meant to ask earlier, just for potential sponsors. Like, what's the best place to reach out? What are you looking for in a sponsor? Just to drop a line in case anybody's listening and wants to get connected that way.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a sponsor link, so btcpp.dev/sponsor. There's like a form you can fill out and it'll send us info. we are definitely looking for people that want to reach a technical audience. So if you've got a project or an SDK or some sort of like application that you want devs building on, working with, sponsoring our hackathon in particular is a really amazing way to get people building with your tools. We saw like a huge success with Nostr Wallet Connect. They sponsored our Brazil conference in February and put up a bounty for devs to go after if they implemented something with Nostr Wallet Connect during the hackathon. I think like half of the people in the hackathon did something with NWC. So that's like an incredible, I think, return on investment for them in terms of like visibility and devs that are like touching the tools. So if that's your project and you want that kind of ecosystem engagement, like love to chat. The other thing is if you're recruiting or you have like a new project that you want to get launched into the ecosystem and get feedback from like a like, I don't know, cohort of your peers, so to speak. Definitely love to have people come sponsor and talk about their project. Yeah, and recruiting, or maybe you just want to show off how cool your engineering team is. You know, I guess it's like sort of a brand building thing, but and like I mean, it's also like if you think about it, like participating in Bitcoin Plus Plus is an amazing way to give back to the wider dev community of Bitcoiners. The sats that you give us help us put money up for the hackathons. Like we don't usually have hackathon sponsors. That usually comes from like ticket sales. Um, so like getting more money in just makes it such that we can have more bigger prizes in the hackathons. We can have like nicer lunches. I can keep doing this, you know. So if you like want to see these things keep happening, yeah, come get involved, like show up. And yeah, we'd love to have you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Nifty. Always a pleasure to get to chat. Really thankful for all the work you're doing on Bitcoin Plus Plus. Any last minute thoughts, or we just want to wrap there?
No, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this year and like really hope to see everyone who's interested in Bitcoin technicals like come to a conference because I think they really are like a good investment in terms of like time and money spent traveling.
Yep. Yeah, very much so. I think a lot of the highlights of my year every year are the side conversations that happen at other conferences. So much less a conference that's actually focused on the Bitcoin technicals that are more interesting to me and many people like me. So yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Nifty.
Cool. Thanks, Seth.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Opt Out. If you did, please take a moment and subscribe to the podcast, or if you're already subscribed, share it with one friend or family member this week. As always, you can check out the link to the guest content and contact info, as well as links to all of the tools we discussed in today's episode. Now get out there and opt out this week.